Lil Wayne was a druggie. Like this group of guys are druggies.
Hip-hop has always flirted with danger, but for some legends, the real war wasn't the streets or the charts. It was addiction. This ain't gossip, and this ain't shock value. These are real artists, real demons, and real consequences that played out in public while the world kept watching. From platinum plaques to hospital beds, from sold-out arenas to jail cells and early graves. Lil Wayne turned lean into a lifestyle until seizures started shutting his body down. Mac Miller poured his pain into music while quietly losing control behind the scenes. Juice WRLD made addiction sound melodic, then paid for it with his life at just 21. DMX battled trauma and crack addiction for decades, fighting for sobriety until his heart finally gave out. Eminem survived a pill addiction so severe, doctors told him he was hours from death, and somehow lived to tell it. Some of these artists escaped, some didn't, and some were lost right in front of the cameras, interviews, documentaries, and viral clips, while fans cheered and labels cashed checks. This is the untold cost of fame, the side of hip-hop nobody wants to romanticize anymore. Because once the beat fades, addiction doesn't care who you are. When people talk about hip-hop legends, they usually focus on the music, the money, the fame. But what gets ignored way too often is what that fame does to the human mind behind the mic. The pressure, the expectations, the nonstop grind, all of it creates a perfect storm where drugs stop being recreational and start becoming survival tools. And for some of the biggest names in rap history, that storm nearly killed them. If we're talking about rappers who went through the fire and somehow came back breathing, there's no story crazier than Eminem. Marshall Bruce Mathers III didn't just flirt with addiction, he lived inside it. At the peak of his career in the early 2000s, after dropping the Slim Shady LP and the Marshall Mathers LP, the pressure became unbearable. Non-stop touring, constant media scrutiny, anxiety that wouldn't shut off, and insomnia that kept him awake for days at a time. To cope, he turned to prescription pills. At first, it didn't feel dangerous. Doctors were handing them out. They were legal. To him, that meant safe. But that illusion didn't last long. Things really escalated around 2002 while he was filming 8 Mile. The brutal shooting schedule wrecked his sleep, and he got prescribed Ambien. That pill became a mental off switch. It allowed him to function, perform, and exist without feeling the anxiety crushing him. But tolerance builds fast. And when Ambien stopped working, he moved on to stronger stuff. Vicodin, Valium, benzos, eventually methadone. By 2004 and 2005, Eminem was taking anywhere from 20 to 30 pills a day. At his worst, it climbed to 60 Valium and 30 Vicodin daily just to feel normal. He wasn't chasing a high anymore. He was trying not to crash. His body was breaking down, his memory was fading, and his personality was disappearing behind the drugs. Everything came to a head in December 2007. Eminem bought pills off the street, thinking they were Vicodin. They weren't. They were methadone, far stronger than what his body was used to. He collapsed in his bathroom and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors told him he was just 2 hours from dying. 2 hours. That close. Even then, addiction didn't let go easily. He relapsed within a month. But eventually something clicked. Through one-on-one counseling, intense physical training, and support from sober friends, including Elton John, who became his sponsor. Eminem fought his way back. He's been sober since April 20th, 2008, over 17 years clean. A miracle by any standard. But for another hip-hop legend, the demons were planted long before fame ever entered the picture, and they never fully let go. DMX wasn't just a rapper, he was raw emotion in human form. Earl Simmons brought pain, rage, faith, and vulnerability into hip-hop in a way few ever had. But his battle with addiction started in childhood. When he was just 14 years old, DMX was betrayed by someone he trusted. A local rapper named Reddy Ron handed him a blunt, without telling him it was laced with crack cocaine. DMX had never smoked weed, never touched drugs. That moment changed everything. He later called it the birth of the monster. That single act sparked a crack addiction that haunted him for the rest of his life. Growing up in poverty-stricken neighborhoods where crime was everywhere, DMX turned to hustling and music as his way out. When his career exploded in 1998 with It's Dark and Hell is Hot, the addiction didn't slow down. It accelerated. Fame didn't heal him. It amplified everything. By the early 2000s, his legal troubles piled up. Drug possession, DUIs, assault charges, each arrest tied back to substance abuse and untreated trauma. He went to rehab multiple times. He prayed. He spoke openly about wanting to change. But addiction isn't just about willpower, especially when it's tied to childhood trauma and mental health. In 2016, DMX nearly died after overdosing in a Yonkers hotel parking lot. He collapsed and needed Narcan to be revived. Still, the cycle continued. He appeared on Dr. Phil and Iyanla, Fix My Life, opening up about his struggles. But the grip never fully loosened. On April 2, 2021, DMX suffered a heart attack caused by a drug overdose. His brain went without oxygen. He slipped into a coma. A week later, on April 9th, he passed away at 50 years old. Toxicology reports showed a deadly mix of cocaine, fentanyl, and other substances. Hip-hop lost a giant, not just to drugs, but to years of unresolved pain. Another legend whose addiction played out in public was Lil Wayne. Dwayne Michael Carter Jr. grew up fast. Signed to Cash Money Records at just 12 years old, he was exposed to adult environments before his brain even finished developing. Coming up in New Orleans' Hollygrove, drug use wasn't hidden, it was normalized. Wayne became synonymous with lean. Codeine and promethazine mixed with soda turned into a cultural symbol, and Wayne helped glamorize it in his music. Songs celebrated it, fans copied it, but behind the image, his body was paying the price. The lean addiction led to severe seizures that repeatedly landed him in the hospital. In October 2012, Wayne suffered 2 seizures on a private jet, forcing emergency landings. In March 2013, he collapsed during a video shoot and was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Doctors found dangerously high levels of codeine in his system. He was unconscious. His stomach was pumped. He spent 6 days in the ICU. People close to him said he had consumed 3 bottles of lean the night before. Years of abuse caught up with him. In 2023, Wayne admitted he suffers from memory loss related to epilepsy, struggling to remember his own lyrics. He's also spoken openly about mental health battles, including a suicide attempt at age 12. While he's tried to cut back following medical advice, the long-term damage remains. And while some legends survived and some were lost, the next story shows how addiction can cut a life short before it even truly begins. Juice WRLD was the voice of a generation drowning in pain. Jared Anthony Higgins turned heartbreak, anxiety, and addiction into chart-topping anthems. But the drugs weren't just lyrics. They were real. He started experimenting around 14 or 15, inspired by the drug-heavy music he listened to. Lean, Percocet, Xanax. They became part of his daily life. As fame skyrocketed, access got easier. People around him noticed the signs. His engineer confronted him in tears during a 2019 tour, terrified by how many pills Juice was taking. He agreed to rehab. A spot was booked, but time ran out. On December 8, 2019, at just 21 years old, Juice WRLD began seizing at Chicago's Midway Airport while police searched his plane. Witnesses saw him swallow pills to hide them. Narcan couldn't save him. He died from an accidental overdose of oxycodone and codeine. Another young star gone, right in front of the world. And this is only the beginning. Addiction doesn't always show up as chaos at first. Sometimes it hides behind success, creativity, and smiles. For Mac Miller, the world saw a gifted, easygoing artist living his dream. What most people didn't see was a young man quietly drowning while trying to keep everyone else comfortable. Malcolm James McCormick came out of Pittsburgh as a teenager with a laid-back style that made rap feel fun again. Early on, it was weed. Nothing wild, just something to take the edge off. But as his career took off, especially after Blue Slide Park debuted at #1 in 2011, the pressure flipped the switch. Bad reviews, non-stop touring, and the weight of expectations started eating at him. Mac admitted later that he wasn't happy, even at the top. To cope, his substance use escalated. Heavy weed turned into lean. In a 2013 interview, he said it plainly. He loved lean, and he was soaked in it constantly. By the time he dropped Faces in 2014, the mask was gone. The mixtape was raw, dark, and honest about daily drug use, depression, and suicidal thoughts. The music wasn't just art, it was a warning. In 2016, Mac managed to get 3 months clean. He talked about feeling clearer, healthier, and more present. But recovery is fragile. After his breakup with Ariana Grande in 2018, he relapsed. Alcohol, cocaine, and pills came back into the picture. On September 7, 2018, Mac Miller was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles home. He was pronounced dead at 26 years old. The cause was acute mixed drug intoxication, fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol. Pills he thought were oxy were laced with fentanyl. 3 men were later charged for supplying them. His death forced the industry to finally confront how deadly fentanyl had become. While Mac's story ended in tragedy, another Southern legend's addiction would play out differently, though no less destructively. Pimp C was more than half of UGK. He was the soul of Southern hip-hop. Chad Lamont Butler helped shape an entire sound, and lean was deeply woven into that culture. For years, sipping syrup wasn't just normalized, it was celebrated. Pimp C rapped about it openly, proudly, but behind the music, the addiction was severe. Lean became a daily habit, and Pimp C also suffered from sleep apnea, a condition that causes breathing to stop during sleep. That combination was deadly. After serving nearly 4 years in prison, he went right back to heavy use. The weight gain, declining health, and exhaustion were all signs his body was struggling to keep up. On December 4, 2007, Pimp C was found dead in his hotel room in West Hollywood. He was 33 years old. The coroner ruled his death accidental, caused by respiratory depression from promethazine and codeine, compounded by sleep apnea. His passing sent shockwaves through the South and forced conversations about lean's real cost. For another Atlanta icon, addiction didn't just threaten his life, it hijacked his freedom. Gucci Mane's rise was chaotic, legendary, and destructive. Radrick Davis didn't just live trap music, he embodied it. Drugs were part of his life early. By middle school, he was already involved in the streets. As his career exploded in the 2000s, his substance abuse spiraled out of control. Weed, lean, ecstasy, prescription pills, crack. Gucci admitted to drinking lean so heavily that he lost touch with reality. He was smoking massive amounts of weed daily and barely sleeping. The addiction fueled erratic behavior, paranoia, and violence. Arrest after arrest followed, more than 20 in total. Weapons charges, drug cases, probation violations. Jail became a revolving door. In 2013, Gucci finally acknowledged how bad it had gotten. He said lean and promethazine destroyed him. He announced plans for rehab before being sentenced to federal prison. That prison sentence ended up saving his life. From 2014 to 2016, Gucci got clean cold turkey while incarcerated. The withdrawals were brutal, physical, mental, emotional, but he pushed through. When he came home, he was unrecognizable. Weight gone, mind clear, energy focused. He married Keisha Kaware, rebuilt his relationships, and rebuilt his career. Gucci became a walking example that recovery is possible, even after years of chaos. But addiction doesn't only live in the streets or the South. For another rap icon, prescription pills nearly sent him back to prison for good. Ty was at the top of the game when addiction crept in quietly. His dependency started with legitimate painkillers prescribed after serious dental surgeries while he was incarcerated. What began as pain management turned into reliance. The pills didn't just numb pain, they made him feel good. In 2010, T.I. was arrested in Los Angeles for ecstasy possession. A failed drug test showed opiates in his system, violating his probation. He was sentenced to 11 months in federal prison. At sentencing, he took full accountability, admitting he screwed up and needed to change. Rock bottom forced clarity. T.I. credited that moment as the wake-up call that saved his life. He reached out to Eminem for guidance, knowing M had survived a similar addiction. Since then, T.I. has stayed publicly sober, focusing on music, business, and growth. Some artists use their pain to warn others. While they're still alive, Macklemore is one of the most open voices about addiction in hip-hop. His struggle started early, long before fame. Alcohol at 13 turned into binge drinking almost instantly. By his late teens and early 20s, he was abusing OxyContin, a drug he's called synthetic heroin. The withdrawals were hell: sweats, shaking, emotional emptiness. When the heist blew up in 2012, Macklemore drifted away from recovery meetings and relapsed. Another relapse hit during the COVID shutdown in 2020 when in-person support disappeared. But he kept fighting. By 2023, he had over 2 years sober again. He used his platform to advocate for treatment, even speaking at the White House about the opioid crisis. His honesty helped normalize recovery in hip-hop. And yet some stories never get a comeback. Fredo Santana came out of Chicago's drill scene with raw authenticity. Growing up in Parkway Gardens, trauma was constant. To cope, he turned to Xanax and lean. He said the drugs helped him escape his past, but they slowly destroyed his body. By 2017, Fredo was suffering seizures, liver failure, and kidney failure. Doctors warned him. He tried to stop. He reportedly had been clean from lean for a couple months, but the damage was already done. On January 19, 2018, Fredo Santana suffered a fatal seizure in his Los Angeles home. He was 27 years old. His death left behind a son and a legacy, and another reminder that addiction doesn't care how talented you are. By the time hip-hop reached global dominance, addiction was already woven deep into the culture, not as a warning, but as a badge of survival. For some pioneers, the damage didn't just come from fame. It came from decades of untreated pain, money with no guidance, and an industry that rewarded chaos as long as the music kept coming. One of the earliest examples is Flavor Flav. Long before reality TV and viral moments, William Jonathan Drayton Jr. was a founding member of Public Enemy, one of the most politically powerful groups hip-hop has ever produced. On stage, Flav was energy, humor, and chaos. Off stage, he was sinking fast. His addiction to crack cocaine and cocaine exploded in the early 1990s, right when Public Enemy was at their peak. By his own admission, he was spending between $2,400 and $2,600 every single day on drugs for 6 straight years. That added up to millions burned on crack, coke, and anything else that would keep him numb. He wasn't just using one substance either. Alcohol, PCP, Quaaludes, weed. It was all in rotation. The addiction wrecked his personal life. He lost custody of his kids. He caught assault charges. He missed shows. He described drugs as something that turned him into a robot, completely detached from reality. His family eventually staged an intervention and sent him to rehab, but recovery didn't stick right away. It took years of relapses, arrests, and humiliation before things finally shifted. By the late 2000s, Flavor Flav committed fully to sobriety. By 2019, he was over 8 years clean from crack and cocaine. By 2023, he had reached 15 years sober from hard drugs. He even admitted to a brief relapse around his 2025 birthday. But instead of hiding it, he took accountability. His story proves recovery isn't a straight line. It's a fight you choose every day. Another artist who turned addiction into a platform for honesty is Macklemore. But his story isn't unique in that sense. What makes it powerful is how early it started and how public he made his recovery. He described addiction as an allergy. Once it's triggered, it doesn't shut off. Even one drink was too much. Fame didn't create his addiction, but it gave it more room to grow. What separates him from many others is that he kept coming back to recovery, even after relapse. He talked openly about the shame, the denial, and the danger of thinking you're cured. That kind of transparency changed conversations in hip-hop, especially for fans who didn't see themselves reflected in traditional street narratives. But while some artists lived long enough to speak, others didn't. The Chicago drill scene produced raw talent and raw pain. Fredo Santana's story is one of the clearest examples of how untreated trauma turns into self-destruction. Growing up surrounded by violence, Fredo used Xanax and lean to escape his memories. He wasn't partying, he was coping. By his mid-20s, his body was failing. Seizures, liver failure, kidney failure. Doctors warned him repeatedly. He tried to clean up. He even stopped sipping lean for weeks. But addiction leaves scars you can't always reverse. On January 19, 2018, Fredo Santana died from a fatal seizure. He was 27. Another young life cut short, another warning ignored until it was too late. And that's the thread connecting all these stories. The warning signs were always there. Eminem survived because he caught himself hours before death. Gucci Mane survived because prison forced sobriety when nothing else worked. T.I. survived because a probation violation snapped him back to reality. Macklemore survived because he kept asking for help. Lil Wayne survived, but his body still carries the cost. Mac Miller, Juice WRLD, DMX, Pimp C, and Fredo Santana weren't as lucky. Hip-hop didn't kill these artists. Addiction did. Trauma did. Silence did. An industry that kept rolling cameras while people were falling apart did. For years, drug use was marketed as creativity. Lean was culture. Pills were vibes. Xanax was chill. But the funerals keep stacking up, and the excuses don't hit the same anymore. The new generation is watching these stories in real time, and they're starting to ask better questions. Why were these artists praised while they were self-destructing? Why did it take death for people to take addiction seriously? And how many more lives does it cost before the narrative finally changes? Some rappers died on camera, some survived on camera, but all of them lived their battles in public. Their stories aren't meant to glorify the struggle, they're meant to expose it. Because behind every viral clip, every interview, every legendary song, there was a human being fighting something invisible. And once addiction takes hold, fame doesn't protect you. It just gives the world front row seats. If this video hits you, it's because these stories aren't just about rappers. They're about real people fighting real demons in front of the whole world. Addiction doesn't care about talent, money, or fame, and hip-hop has paid the price again and again. Some legends made it out, some didn't, and too many were gone before their story could change. If you or someone you know is dealing with addiction, understand this. Help isn't weakness, and relapse isn't failure. Every artist in this video shows one truth. Recovery starts the moment you stop pretending you're okay. Talking about it can save lives. If you want more real hip-hop stories that go deeper than the headlines, the truth behind the fame, the pain, and the survival, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling us which story hit you the hardest, or share your own experience. You never know who might need to hear it. And if this video made you think differently about drugs and hip-hop, share it. Let it reach someone before it's too late. Because music can save lives, but only if the people making it get the chance to live.